Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. Today, first up in news, I can't believe that I forgot to actually say it yesterday because it was another huge part of the Future of D&D set of the Future D&D panel. That's what it was called. Um, we are getting a new source booky kind of thing next year, as early as the 25th of January, with the rules expansion set that they are releasing. That will include Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. I do not know how I forgot to actually mention this yesterday. It is going to contain, I believe it's 250 different monster stat blocks, including, and also 30 different playable races outside of the ones that are found in the player's handbook, which is crazy. Now, a lot of those are entirely possibly going to be reprints, which is fine. It is what it is. But that is coming out with that set, the special big set that's going to cost like 170 American dollars for those three books plus the DM screen. All three of those books will have like exclusive foil covers for that run. And then sometime later in the year, it's going to have its own exclusive run. So if you already have the other two, you can wait, or you can bite the bullet and get, those books again. That I cannot believe that I forgot to throw that in the news yesterday. This is where they talked about having all those streamlined monster stat blocks and everything like that, which I know that I did say. I just can't believe that I skipped actually telling you guys what it is and everything like that. So, not really the point. That is the news about that for now. And that's actually everything we have for news. So moving right along to streams. As far as I know, the only one that is happening is on the official D&D channel. That's twitch.tv/DND. At 6 p.m. Eastern Time, it is the C Team again for another couple hours today. They stream pretty much every Tuesday. If you guys know of any streams, please go ahead and let me know so that I can check them out and put them into the rotation of announcements. Again, there are way more than this. All you have to do is go to Twitch or wherever and type in D&D, go to the subject of D&D, and there are going to be plenty of people playing. There's always, always, always a ton of streams happening at any given point in the evening times. Moving along from streams, we arrive at our new fun segment, TND, where I show you guys my mug and I talk about what tea I'm drinking. Today, I have this mug that looks like it is wearing a Cable Knit sweater, kind of like the one that Chris Evans wore in Knives Out. It's one of my newer mugs. I'm a big fan of it. It's a lot of fun. And I'm having a peach lemon herbal tea, which is very, very good. You steep it for 3 to 6-ish minutes, depending upon how strong you want it, at boiling temperature. Herbal teas, you have to get up to boiling in order to actually get there. Technically, it's 205 Fahrenheit to 212, but boiling is just easiest to do. So that is the tea that I am having today. So, moving right along, our topic today is, I have titled it, More Than Just Hitting Stuff. Parentheses, interesting combat. Now, I'm sure we will do like a full week on combat at some point here, and I will revisit this topic a little bit. But I wanted to talk about, I say interesting combat. I want to talk more about like descriptive combat and how you can make combat more interesting for yourself and everybody at the table by having a more descriptive set of combat actions that you do. So broader picture first, right? D&D is it is made up of the core 3 pillars of adventure of Dungeons and Dragons. That those are exploration, social interaction, and combat. Now, in theory, it means that the game should be divided evenly between those 3 things, right? But the way that the rules have sort of laid themselves out, combat is the one that requires the most rules. It is the one that requires the most upkeep because it is so crunchy and it happens so fast. Even if technically it takes the longest, it is the one where every full round of combat takes 6 seconds. So they have to have a lot of rules to help structure that out. In fact, the majority of the player handbook rules are centered around combat. I think it's like half, yeah, of the DMG rules are adjacent to combat at least. And I say majority of them are centered around combat, mostly because there's a huge section of it obviously that is on character creation, but so many of the things in character creation are then also linked to combat. Or you could omit character creation entirely because it's not actually part of playing the game itself, right? Um, Obviously, you need to create a character in order to play the game. That's not what I'm not saying that that's not important, but if you were to take those out and be left with the actual rules of playing the game, you'd still be left with the majority of them being combat-based rules. So there's no good way to say this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Combat can get boring. I know that there are a lot of people whose jams are like the super crunchy, like getting into it number bits of combat. That's not for everybody, and honestly, it seems like the majority of the newer players that are coming in from sources like your Critical Role, your Dimension 20, etc., 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 are more interested in the role play side of everything because of the fact that that is what they see, and also it's a more approachable way to get into the game, getting in through the role play avenue of it, simply because we talk to people all the time like that. As human beings, that's part of what we do. We don't roll dice, do math, and fake fight stuff all the time. As much as I would maybe prefer that, because that sounds like a great time, and talking to people can be stressful. It's not how we do it. So it's easier for people to get into it via the roleplay aspect of it, and then to fold in the combat rules following that. So combat can get boring, especially for those people who are really more there for the roleplay aspect of things. So, like I said, we'll probably talk about this more in the future, but there's a bunch of good ways to break up combat to keep it interesting for people. That's, throwing things like puzzles or chases or skill checks or stuff like that into it, just to keep everything moving forward, giving every different player something that makes them feel useful instead of just hitting something. But sometimes it comes down to just hitting stuff, and that's fine. Honestly, it's totally fine for it to come down to just hitting stuff. At the end of the day, the bad guy has to get fought off, right? The big bad that is going to come in and destroy the city or whatever, you got to take him out one way or another. And sometimes it just is fighting. So this is the part where I remind everybody that you can roleplay in combat. There's nothing wrong with role-playing in combat. It's actually, at my table, at a lot of tables that I know about that I have played at, it is heavily encouraged to RP while you're in combat. Now, a huge and very important portion of that is to know what it is that you are going to be doing ahead of time so that you can roleplay in combat. Don't check out while everybody else is taking their turn. That's just basic combat etiquette, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, again at some point later. But don't check out when other people are taking their turn. Be thinking about what you want to do and planning so that when it gets to your turn, you know the things that you want to do, and then you can play around in the space that you're given because you know what you want to do, right? So be prepared to roleplay in combat by being prepared for combat. Because if you can do that, then honestly, your turns are going to be very interesting. Every class, every action, every word, every second can have a major impact and be very impactful. It doesn't just have to be that huge critical hit that comes out of nowhere that takes like half of an enemy's health down. It really doesn't. It can be, a word or something to another enemy, to another player, that changes the course of the game. And a lot of good DMs will reward this kind of play. And I have not been a crazy Critical Role fanboy on here not yet. But this is the part where I go into it and I really, really highlight two things. Well, three. We'll go with three things that I think have come from Critical Role that are honestly so, so good. The first one is a super general, how do you want to do this? That phrase that Matt has like attached to himself in such an inseparable way has given the inspiration to so many DMs everywhere to let their players be descriptive with how they want to finish something off, how they want to like really dig in and deal that final blow. And that is phenomenal. As a DM, giving your players the agency to describe their own actions is vital. It is one of the most useful tools you can have because it takes some of the burden of entertainment off of yourself. And you're just one brain, right? Your players are a group of 3 to 7, 8 plus more brains. And everybody's going to interpret stuff differently. And so if you ask them how they want to do something, they tell you what it is that they want to do. And then you interpret that and recite it back to them. You guys together have come up with something far more interesting than either one of you could have come up with alone. And it makes the player feel epic. That's kind of the point. And I know that this has been done for years before Matt Mercer came around on the public stage in this way. But he is obviously the one that has really, really sort of like nailed it down. I've heard other things like finishing blow, finish them, him, her, whatever, from Mortal Kombat, things like that. Just things to sort of start up this process of like, you're the one that killed it. How do you want to take this thing out, right? The second thing I want to call attention to from Critical Role is actually more of a very specific couple of moments. Well, I'm thinking of a specific couple of moments. I'm not going to super list them out because I don't want to like spoil anything if you haven't seen this part of the show. It's especially present in Campaign 2, as is the third thing I'll talk about. But there are different moments in the game during combat where either tensions rise or characters make decisions that are points of major character growth. Nothing will develop a character better than how they react to a high-pressure situation. That doesn't always have to just be how they react when they're talking to somebody in like a noble house or something trying to make a deal on something. It can be where they show mercy on stuff, where they show restraint, where they don't show restraint, that sort of thing. It really helps inform character choices and character development as you move through the story, because combat is pretty much the most high pressure situation that you can be put in, because you get a little snippet of time in the full range of the entire table that you then have to wait to get back to. If you use your time to make a character choice, that is, in my mind, oftentimes better than just punching the thing, right? Again, it's important to hit the thing, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to just like talk down every bad guy that you come across. But I think that it's one of the best times to make solid character choices. In fact, there was, in the most recent home game session that I played, there was the real possibility that one of the players was going to, against their own volition, kill this NPC that was entirely helpless. And we had another player step up and be prepared to like throw himself in between this other player and the NPC. And we weren't in combat, but as soon as she had gone for that and he had done that, we would have started combat. And we talked about it afterwards, and they were ready to not really fight it out, because the one that was going to throw himself in between them wasn't going to fight. But make that character choice to be the one to step in front of the actual blade. And things like that, decisions like that, I can think of a couple of times that Bo in particular made those kind of calls. Think of a couple times that Caleb either showed restraint or didn't show restraint that resulted in character development choices. Things like that are phenomenal. And actually, in bringing up character choices, I'm moving along to the third thing, and that is just Liam O'Brien. If you do not watch Critical Role, that is totally fine. I get it. It's not for everybody. But if you do, and I say Liam O'Brien, you know exactly what I am talking about. This man has gone from being the guy who just kind of ran around playing this super edgy rogue throwing daggers at stuff to being the most technically descriptive combat descriptionist I have ever seen. He did a good job with Vax in Campaign 1. His like technicality with how he casts spells as Caleb is incredible. And then if you watched Exandria Unlimited, he carried that over to Orym as well, when Orym was a fighter with a sword, and that's all he did. Liam was one of the most fascinating people to watch during combat every single time because of the way he described everything that he did. In Exandria Unlimited, he was a fighter with a sword, and that's it. And he had one Battlemaster maneuver for the majority of it, but every time he would use it, he would go into this deep description of it. And he often would spend more time on his turn describing exactly what he was doing than actually just rolling the dice and doing the thing. He talks about flipping his sword, sliding between legs, coming up, describing exact body parts that he was trying to hit, and things like that. And that is phenomenal practice to be able to take and implement yourself. Now, that is an important thing, or that's a good thing to do. However, you cannot get upset if you describe something really cool and then the dice don't agree with you. If the dice don't agree with you, then they catch it on their shield, it catches off the side of their armor, they twist out of the way a little bit, and you miss exactly where you're trying to hit. That's fine. That happens. It's a fight, and things that are in fights are usually pretty good at fighting, right? So don't be upset if something doesn't work out exactly how you want it to. Another good example of this actually is Marisha in Campaign 2 as Bo, being super descriptive with all of her different martial arts things, because that's really what she could do with a monk. You punch stuff and you move fast. And on the flip side, spellcasters, like I said, Caleb in Campaign 2, the exact description of hand movements, pulling things out of pouches and stuff like that to cast the spells, it was all beautiful. It was amazing to get to watch, because it was all engaging and it helped paint the picture in the mind. And D&D, even when there's minis and maps and everything, is ultimately a theater of the mind game. Everything is happening in your head, and there's this little representation of it out on the table in front of you. So, if you have not seen EXU or Critical Role Campaign 2, or if you have no intention of it, totally fine. There, I'm sure, is a great supercut somewhere of Liam describing stuff from EXU, because again, it is so good, so good. He takes every single moment that he is in combat and turns it into a mini how do you want to do this, and then whenever he would get those, he would ramp it up a notch because he did such a good job with his description. So the main takeaway from all of this is be descriptive with your combat actions. It makes it more interesting for you. It makes it more interesting for everybody around you. It honestly raises the bar of quality at the table. And that is really what you want to create a compelling, interesting, and very high quality story with your friends at the end of the day. That is everything that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, I made this announcement yesterday. If we can hit 200 subscribers by October 1st, the time that I upload a video on October 1st, I will go ahead and I will cut the goal that we had to get this pushed as a podcast ahead of time and push it as a podcast on as many different platforms as I can get, including the full backlog of episodes. So if you've missed anything, you will be able to catch up. That is 200 subscribers in the next 4 days. We have hit 20 since yesterday. Like, we've added 20 since yesterday, which is phenomenal. And if we keep at that pace, we're gonna make it there. So please continue to tell your friends, tell anybody that might enjoy the show, share it with them so that they can see it. Don't forget to rate my mug in the comments. I know that one of you will, and I appreciate that every single day. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, especially. You guys are the ones that are really helping make this show happen. I could not be doing this without you, so I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much once again. I believe that is everything that I have, which means that that is it for me for today. Thank you so much for making me part of your morning routine, and until next time, keep on rolling.